All right, the model we're talking about now is going to be a model of the eye in the orbit with all of its associated structures. And so we're going to start sort of superficially and work our way deep. And so we'll see here that we have our superior palpebrae over here and our inferior palpebrae over here. So this is our top eyelid and the bottom eyelid. Where these two meet on the lateral side is going to be called the lateral palpebral commissure or the lateral canthus. And where they meet on the medial side here is going to be called the medial palpebral commissure or the medial canthus. The medial canthus is going to be near the bridge of the nose. And then inside the medial canthus we have this little pink area here, and that's going to be called the lacrimal caruncle. And we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of the lacrimal apparatus in just a second. Other things I want to mention are, well, I guess we'll start with the lacrimal apparatus over here. So we've got the lacrimal gland over here, and the lacrimal gland is technically, you can see, divided into two parts. We have the orbital part, which is more in the orbit of the eye, and then we have the palpebral part, but you guys just need to be able to tell me it's the lacrimal gland. And we can see here that there are going to be little ducts in here that are going to go and secrete lacrimal fluid, right, which are your tears, into the eye to help moisten the eye every time you blink. So the tears are going to go across, and they're going to kind of be blinked from lateral to medial. And then once we get here, you have number 7 is a lacrimal puncta, and this lacrimal puncta is going to help absorb some of the tears. They're going to go sort of medially. You've got some areas here to help absorb the tears, and the tears are going to be absorbed by these puncta here. You have a superior and inferior one, and then they're going to be connected to these lacrimal canaliculi. So you can see here, these are the lacrimal canaliculi, and these lacrimal canaliculi are going to go back to this guy over here called the lacrimal sac. So 9 and 10 are both going to be part of the lacrimal sac, and it's eventually going to enter the nasolacrimal duct, which is going to connect the lacrimal sac down to the nose. So if whenever you're crying and your nose starts running, that's going to be because your extra tears are going to actually be coming down and going into your nose through that nasolacrimal duct. This tendon up here is going to, or this muscle here, this is kind of the tendon as part of this muscle, which is going to be the levator palpebrae superioris. So this is the important muscle for raising your superior eyelid, the levator palpebrae superioris. All right, so we're going to remove this area here. So we can see here, muscle-wise, that this top muscle here is the levator palpebrae superioris, but under it there's another muscle, and this is going to be the superior rectus muscle. So the superior rectus muscle sits right under the levator palpebrae superioris. We'll get to that in a second. I want to look a little bit at the back of this eyelid over here. We can see this is going to be where the lacrimal gland was, and you can see these little ducts coming into the inside of the eye, and this is where the lacrimal fluid is going to be secreted, and it will be coming out here on the surface of the eye. On the outside of the eye here too, we have the outer fibrous tunic of the eye is going to consist of the cornea, which is this clear structure here, which is labeled 8, and then the sclera, which is the white structure here that's labeled 7. But on top of the sclera is going to be something called the conjunctiva, and that's where these blood vessels are. So these little blood vessels here are going to be in this clear layer of conjunctiva. And so if you've ever had pink eye and it's called conjunctivitis, that's an inflammation of this clear layer that's kind of covering up on top of the sclera. And the conjunctiva has lots of vessels in it. The sclera does have some blood vessels too. They're a little bit bigger, and the conjunctiva has some blood vessels. The other thing is that the conjunctiva is going to start on the sclera, and then it's going to kind of reflect, and it's going to come here, and it's also going to line the inside of your eyelids. And so this is going to be called the it's going to line the inside of your eyelids. And this is going to be called the palpebral conjunctiva, which is when it's on the inside of the eyelids. These guys right here, you also have some glands inside your eyelids called the tarsal glands. You guys don't have to identify them, but all right, so we're going to remove the eyelid now, and we're going to talk a little bit about the outside of our eye as well as the extrinsic eye muscles. And so we've already talked about some of the extrinsic eye muscles before, and so remember this very top one here, you can see that there are two muscles here layered on top of each other. The very top one is the levator palpebrae superioris, and that's going to be the one that attaches to that superior eyelid, whereas the bottom one over here is going to attach up to the sclera of the eyeball, and this is going to be the superior rectus. the superior rectus. Remember that the rectus muscles are the muscles that attach to the sclera and then kind of go straight back. So we have our superior rectus. We know this is the lateral side here. So this is going to be the lateral rectus. Let me remove the lateral rectus here so we can see better. In here on the bottom is going to be the inferior rectus. And if we remove the superior rectus and the levator palpebrae superioris, we can see that in the medial side right here, this is going to be the medial rectus. And if we look at the front here, you can see this is going to be the tendon of the medial rectus as it goes straight back. And so that's the medial rectus, and this is the inferior rectus. Now there's also two oblique muscles, right? And so we have the first one is the superior oblique. And so this right here, labeled 5, is the tendon of the superior oblique. And remember that it's going to point towards the medial side because this guy right up here is the trochlea. So it's like a little pulley in the bone. And so it goes right along with trochlea. And then this is the actual muscle of the superior oblique. So this is the muscle of the superior oblique. It's going to be very medial and very superior and medial, the muscle of the superior oblique. Now last we have the inferior oblique, and so if we look here, we can see it's going to be underneath the eye, and so the inferior rectus is the one that attaches and goes straight back, which is here, that's the inferior rectus, whereas the inferior oblique is going to be this guy that makes this sort of turn. So you can see this is the inferior oblique, and then it turns and it goes at an angle all the way to the side here. So this is the inferior oblique. So make sure that you've got a handle on which muscles are which. It can get a little bit confusing. The other thing that we can see really well here is going to be the optic nerve. So the optic nerve comes out of the back of the eyeball here, and then it's going to come back, and remember we have two eyes, and so we're going to have an optic nerve coming from one eye and an optic nerve coming from the other side, and then they're going to cross here at this optic chiasm. And then after they cross the optic chiasm, they're going to continue back to the brain as an optic tract. So we have the optic nerve, the optic chiasm is where they cross, and then the optic tract is going to continue back towards the brain.